So now let's get started with this. This presentation is more of an extension of what you've been hearing about throughout the day-to-day. We are trying to bring across the identity paradigm onto the enterprise world. And this story is about all our different services, which is the Google Cloud Platform, the apps world that we have, and identity sort of all tying them all together. So before I start, I'd like to introduce the presenters who are going to sort of do this one. I'm like the product manager for Identity for Work. Along with me, I have Ankur. He is my development lead who works along with me, the same standards. And then we have Amit, who's the product manager for Google Cloud Platform. And three of us are going to sort of do a deep dive into each of our areas to bring across the complete story across to you, right? So with that, let me get started. Here's my clicker. So this is how we look at it. Like, you as a customer enter Google Enterprise, right? And what we generally see is that you come to us for either GCP, which is Google Cloud Platform, or Google Apps for Work, or our Google authentication on mobile devices. And these are the sort of customers that we look at, right? But that's not the complete story. I think most of our customers come to us for this, which is trust. And the story that we're trying to weave together today is the story of trust and how we keep on sort of investing in areas like security, in areas like identity, in areas like GCP and APIs, so that this trust is sort of reinforced every time sort of we year after year. So with that, let's take a very high-level view of what we have in our ecosystem today. So the first layer that we have today is this platform layer, which is Google Identity as a Service. We have a generic platform which at the core of it has a directory, which offers all these APIs and services by which you can sort of take on the Google resources, extend them, and get going with your enterprise. Right? And then what we also provide on top of that is various services like SSO, provisioning, and security that sort of makes it simpler to use and more secure. And then we sort of take it to the endpoints that you have, which is with the mobile solutions that we provide. And finally, there's analytics and a lot of reporting on top of that, which sort of makes you feel what it is, what all these services offer on a day-to-day basis, and how we sort of take control over each of your implementations. On top of this is our services, like these are the package services that sort of you use, and sort of this is our popular apps world and also the Google Cloud Platform that you guys are using. And finally, on top of this are you guys. So that's the overall architecture, and we're going to touch upon each of these. Like, this is a very simplified view of the overall thing that we sort of see on a day-to-day basis. So with this, right, let's start honing down on one of these, which is the bottom part, which is Google IDaaS. This is what we see our Google Identity story as today. It's a honeycomb of 6 services that we combine together, and we keep on investing on year after year. The first one is directory, which you've been hearing out throughout the day if you've been through the Google sessions. Next one is SSO. The previous session talked really a lot about the security that we're really offering. And then there's provisioning and our mobile services and audit and reporting. And the combination of all these services sort of increases the trust level that we have, like that you guys have on us, right? So that's the overview. I think now we'll just hand over one presenter after the other to sort of talk about each of these areas one by one. So I'll actually call upon Ankur to talk about our directory services and SSO, and then we'll follow it up with the other services that we have. With that, I call upon Ankur.
Thanks, Shashank. So let's first look at the directory part of the honeycomb, right? So what is directory? Like a couple of years back, we, under the brand of Admin SDK, launched a bunch of APIs, like Cloud Directory APIs. These are directory essentially is in cloud managing your resources, various resources that you have in your company, right? These are like domain owned and admin managed resources. These are resources like users, groups, devices, org units, various other constructs on top of these core resources, things like role management, things like policy and enforcement, ACLing models, and things of that sort. So time for quick trivia. Under this cloud directory resources, right, like think about like user groups and devices. Can anybody take a guess here that, you know, how many resources that we have today in Google Cloud, like, you know, cloud directory? Anybody?
5 billion, probably.
Ooh. So this.
We don't know that much.
So this, yeah, like. So yeah, I wanted to, like, you know, talk about the scale that at which, like, you know, we do operate, and these are like enterprise resources, only like Google Enterprise users and groups. So the number is 600 million. Next question. How much traffic do you think we get, let's say, every month on these APIs alone? And again, these are just enterprise directory APIs we are talking about.
100 million.
So it's in order of billion per month, per month, yeah. Okay, so given this identity conference, let's look into more details around one of the core resources of directory, user resource or enterprise identity, right? So we of course have, like, you know, the CRUD API around the user resource that we have in directory. The user itself comprises of some of the core features, things like, you know, basic information about user, contact information, and some enterprise attributes, things like his manager, his like, you know, desk location and things of that sort, right? Like various different enterprise things that you can think about a user, his emails, his IMs, his other attributes. But we also realize that a single shoe won't fit all sizes. So every enterprise has its own needs, and you need customization, custom attributes on top of what we provide as core attributes that I just mentioned. So we have something called custom schemas, where admin can come and define their own schema for their company of things that, you know, you use in your world for metadata about users that you own. So in the very simple example here, what we are talking about is, let's say you want to create a schema to add location of where the employee sits, and you can add fields like, you know, his desk number with various types, and whether these things are repeatable or not, and whether these are like domain public visible or not, and various different parameters around what these fields are. You can specify those things. So all of this is available as part of Cloud Directory APIs that we have. On top of the custom extension of schema, the other big feature or rich functionality that we have on user resource is rich discoverability, like, you know, search on top of any of these attributes that you have. So once you create all these users, naturally what you want to do next, you know, as admin is, like, you know, maybe you want to search everybody who reports under a particular manager, let's say under Eric, or maybe you want to find out every employee that sits in San Francisco and work, you know, on identity project, let's say. Or you can actually search on top of the custom attributes that you created just for your company, and even those things will work. We have indexing and search capabilities on top of that as well. So maybe after the conference, my manager will go search for people who give presentations at this conference, and probably he'll give, like, you know, 100% raise for those people. So with all this rich capabilities of extension of schema and search capabilities on top of these this user, it's easy to build company white pages kind of applications, or various different applications that you want to build on top of these APIs. These APIs give you ways to find basic information about the user, his manager upchain, his his reportees, his various different profile things. And if you notice, there are things which you may have just for your company, the custom schema and custom attributes that you added for your users. You can use those things he works on particular team, particular theme, particular his mission is like saving Gotham in this case. Okay, so far all of this capability around custom attributes and custom schemas was just part of the APIs, and we continue to invest bringing these things on our admin console, the UI way of managing, where admin goes and manages all these directory resources on the UI. So this is typically the basic attributes that we had so far, things like basic information, contact information, and employee details. If you want to add more metadata and custom categories, you can add a new category, and a pop-up will, or a next screen will come where you can add more detail about that category, what its description is, what various fields that you want. Again, as Shashank mentioned in last talk, this takes care and keeps custom schemas in mind, various different type of attributes, like you have primitives like bytes or strings or Boolean kind of things, and then you have some rich things like email, dates, and phone numbers as well. You can specify whether the field is multi-valued or not, whether it's domain public versus private, and things of that sort. Once you create this schema, this feels very native, feels very much same as other basic schemas or core schemas that you have, or core attributes, categories that you have in system. So far, like we have here created health insurance as the custom category. So once you have that category in user creation flow or user update flow, you can actually now use that category, and that category looks native. When you are creating that user, you can enter more details or all these details about that user, every field that you just created. So once you populate, like you notice that all the different various data types that we were talking about, we have support around, like date field comes as date, and you can have that nice user experience that comes out of these things. Once you create this user on the user details page, again, of course, you can go look at all those details about the user. Okay, so we talked about user, but we also continue to improve our API story and pull more and more features and more resources onto the directory, right? So over last year, one of the resources that we added in the directory is the core customer resource itself. Now, using this resource, you can do get or update of basic metadata around the customer, his like where the registered name of company, or where what its logo looks like, or things of that sort. Another key feature around customer that we added last year is around rebranding, or like changing the primary domain name. So earlier it was not possible for domain administrator to go and rebrand or change the primary domain of the company if they need to, or if they wanted to. So we heard the feedback, and we added that feature in the directory last year. The next resource we want to talk about is around domains. So within the customer, you can have multiple domains. You can have domains of various types, like you can add domains as aliases or secondary domains. Again, so like we used to, or we do differentiate primary domains with secondary domains in a lot of ways, and earlier it was not possible to do bunch of things on secondary domains, which again another big pain point that we listen from customer, and we are fixing that, fixing those problems one by one. One of the things that we fixed was or is around on secondary domains now you can add custom URLs. So like typically for if you want to go to Gmail, you do mail.google.com/company.com. But if you want to have custom URLs which will redirect you to your corporate email for Google, using Gmail was not possible on secondary emails. It was only possible on primary emails. So we fixed that. Next addition in the directory is around roles resources. So roles are nothing but set of privileges that you create, and then you create delegated admin saying that you assign this role to a particular user, and now this user has all these privileges, so he can do all these various things. Typical use case of where you like as developer can use these APIs is to do a lot of UI development. If there is a delegated admin who is logging in, if you know what roles and privileges he has, you will paint only those kind of pictures. So, for example, a delegated admin who has just user privileges, user management privileges, you don't want him to show groups related UI or UX because he doesn't have that privilege. So, those kind of use cases can now be fulfilled with use of these APIs. So, next pillar or next part of the honeycomb, let's talk about single sign-on. And single sign-on is not new to this audience. Everybody knows single sign-on is you sign on or log in only once. Again, there are a couple of industry standards in this area. OpenID Connect is one of the places where we all know that Google is very heavily invested in, and we are in the work grouplets to design these protocols as well. For enterprises, we have Google Apps Marketplace, which is a place where developers can write applications on top of OpenID Connect standards and make it available to all enterprise customers. This helps making app discovery and installation very easy and very smooth. The other standard around SSO is SAML, of course, and when we were here last year, we talked that we were working on this and we were adding support for SAML. So later last year, in October, we actually launched SAML 2.0 support, where Google now can act as IDP. We had 15 apps at the time of launch in the catalog, where these are well-known kind of apps where the integration is smooth and we can give you better documentation and hints and whatnot. Over a period of time, we increased our catalog. Now we have 30 apps in the catalog. Of course, you can do custom app installation if you want. If you have all those metadata details about the app of your choice. As Shashank was mentioning, we are continue to build more and more features on this thing, and after launch we heard feedback around it's kind of hard to debug if the setup is not working and a lot of users are getting failed authentication. So we are building all that pipeline to actually do better audit logging and logging of what is happening and what's going on. So admin has now more insights into when and who, or which users are trying to attempt to log into which systems, and how those attempts are going, whether you can successfully issue SAML assertions for those attempts or not, and if things are failing, why are they failing? You can filter down on those various details, and it helps debugging. So that's coming soon. For next section, I'll invite back Shashank.
Yeah, thanks, Ankur. So I think we started this session with trust, right? And I'm just going to tie this back into the notion of trust that we talked about. So what we heard last year was that you wanted more flexibility in terms of how you use our APIs and how you have more flexibility around the sort of domain and sort of customer APIs that we have. We did that this year, right? What we also heard is that we want more flexibility in how we sort of go about creating the resources via the UI, and that's why you see the custom attributes that we have over here. Thirdly, we also kept on hearing that the SSO story in Google has to be complete, and that's why we went forward and sort of implemented the SAML IDP. So we have been big proponents of OIDC overall, but we've completed the story now with SAML IDP support as well. So essentially, we've been hearing you, and we've been investing in the areas that we've been called upon. The next section that I'm going to cover is generally upon security and devices. This is going to be a little bit of this. Most of this content is what I've covered in the previous sessions as well, so I'm going to wrap it up early and hand it over to GCP. But this is on the continuing notion of trust, right? So essentially what we also did this year, and this is what Christian talked about, is that we really, really elevated our standards on security. We actually have stepped into a paradigm in which we are making passwords go away and making your accounts more as unphishable as possible. The last talk detailed this out, and totally detailed the paradigm out with the demo. If you're interested in sort of learning more about how we are making our accounts unphishable, please do join us at the booth. We also have cool devices to give off so that you can try this out for your organizations, right? So that's on security. Moving on, right? What we have also done is, in terms of provisioning this year, right? We are trying to make your life simpler. So all of the things that we talked about are around simplicity and security, right? So this is the next step that we are trying to make your life simpler. Because we sort of are IDP for you, we really want that other than SSO, you are able to sort of recreate the users that you have within us into other SaaS apps as seamlessly as possible. So what you have is the admin console, and what I'm going to do is take you through a step-by-step journey on how simple it is to sort of use us as IDP and instantiate users from the IDP to various SaaS apps, right? So what you would see going down the line, and this is upcoming, we're making an early announcement, is that you'll have this user provisioning card appear up on the application page. So the application is Facebook at Work, right? Or it could be Slack or any other application. And you would actually have a user provisioning card that shows up over there. This is the zoom in on the card. What the card does is it has the setup user provisioning button, and then it has a report which shows up on the right-hand side, right? So what we've tried to do is make the setup as seamless and easy as possible. So it's a minimum 3-step process, and that gets you set up for user provisioning going down the line. Step 1, what we ask you to do is actually authorize us so that we can sort of Google gets authorized to sort of start creating users at the Slack end, right? So once you press on the authorize button, we sort of do a dance, OAuth dance sort of thing, or depends on whatever authentication mechanism that you're using with the SP to sort of get authorized on that particular platform. So you'll be redirected to Slack, given that, let's say the application is Slack, where you enter your credentials and you get authorized, right? The admin gets authorized to start provisioning users over there. As a result, you come to the next step, which is nothing but attribute mapping. So as you notice, when the attribute mapping step comes up, we've actually already mapped the existing attributes by default by the best match that we know. What you see on the left-hand side are Slack attributes. What you see on the right-hand side are actually Cloud Directory, Google Directory attributes, and we've already done a pre-mapping, so that it's easy for the admin to already figure this out. There might be certain custom attributes that the admin may want to add further on down the line, and that flexibility is possible as well. Like if they just scroll down, they should be able to just see the custom attributes and add those as well, right? Step 3, and this is just an optional step, people can also mention the group that they want to work, on which they want provisioning to really work on, and the group can be is just something that they type in over there, and that's about it. And that's end of provisioning. And that's how simple the overall setup for provisioning is. It's step 1, 2, 3, end of provisioning, you're done, you're good to go. And we tell you that your provisioning is done. All you need to go is just activated. You're all set up to start sending users or refreshing user data into Slack. Next step that I want to really talk about is how we sort of, that the card that you saw earlier, which used to say setup provisioning, transforms into this card, wherein the reporting section remains the same, and what you see is the provisioning status. So essentially, all you now need to do, the admin needs to do, is control provisioning as and when he requires. So the admin can actually switch off provisioning whenever he thinks that provisioning is not required and make the necessary changes. And then he can quickly go and sort of activate provisioning at will. We just take a confirmation because provisioning has licensing sort of implications as well at certain points of time, depending on the SP implementations. On confirmation from the admin, provisioning starts and the provisioning status changes to on. And obviously, as a subsequent step, you would start seeing users being created and the report for users being created on Slack sort of starts popping up. Each of the numbers that you see over there is a clickable link by which you can get redirected to the reporting page, and provisioning sort of becomes super easy for you. So that's the sort of user UI flow, which makes provisioning super easy. Finally, what we have also done is the complexity of the whole implementation we have hidden away, but we have given you enough flexibility that you can exercise down the line, which is like, if you really, really wanted to go about changing any of these configurations, that's advanced usability that we have restored on all those links that we see on the right-hand side, right? So you can actually go about being flexible about what is the provisioning scope that you want to set up. If you want to have 2 or 3 groups, you can go ahead and do that. You can also set up the deep provisioning configuration that you want to have. So if at the IDP end, there's a user who's terminated, what is the action that you want to take on the RP side or on the SP side is something that you can actually configure over here. And this is something that we heard as a ardent need from a lot of our admins as well. They really, really wanted to configure how they want to go about deprovisioning of users at the SP end. And that's extra flexibility that we have provided as well. So that's a simple look into like how we're coming out with provisioning this year and how you can use Google as IDP and sort of make provisioning simple and easy to use, right? Finally, I'll just touch upon MDM very briefly before I hand it over to GCP, because I want like you guys to really, really delve into the GCP flavor as well. I just covered this. We've done a lot of work in our mobile management space as well. We've been tied to Android for Work at the hip. And we've brought on support for BYOD sort of work profiles, where there's a segregation of work profiles and personal profile. Obviously, the segregation ensures that data in either space does not mix, and it gives the admin control, DLP control over data that's there in the enterprise space. So essentially, you can't start copy-pasting data from the work profile into your personal profile, and those are the sort of restrictions we impose with DLP. The other good thing to notice is that for all versions beyond 6.0, Google Device Management is going to be automatically be available in all devices. So that's something that we've done this year. What we've also done is like provided account wipe facility not only for Android devices, but both Android and iOS devices. What this ensures is, as an admin, you're able to sort of govern what data you want to keep at the end user device. And if you have an employee who's gone rogue, you can actually go ahead and sort of wipe out their account data, and also wipes out like all the apps that the admin has actually gone ahead and installed in that profile. So that gives you extra control over how you are actually going ahead and sort of dealing with devices when it comes to your users, enterprise users. Finally, we also sort of provide a curated app space, wherein in both sort of Google and Android devices, we allow the admin to actually curate the sort of apps that the end user can sort of start using. And that's been something that we've been working on this year. All the 4 things that I mentioned below, which is a silent push and a custom configuration of apps and internal apps being pushed into devices, is something that we have done for most of our Android users, right? So that's extra flexibility that we have provided for all the end users who are sort of using Android devices. So if the company had Android devices sort of installed, these are extra things that you have. Obviously, you want to take them to the iOS space as well. So that's probably the overall summary that we have from Google Apps for Work in the last year. And obviously, we're going to keep on investing in this area so that notion of trust further goes up. We'd be more than happy to sort of entertain your questions at the end of this session. And I would like to call upon Amit so that he can describe what they have done in the cloud platform space to sort of make the enterprise picture complete.
Thank you, Shashank. I'm Amit. I've got good news. I'm the last speaker, and I'm the most interesting speaker. No, only one of those things is true. So let me proceed from here. I'm stunned to learn that many people don't actually know that Google has a cloud. They know some of our lesser-known competitors that are based in Seattle, but we, in fact, do have a rich cloud. And so I'm going to talk about that briefly here. I think identity plays a very key role here, but I think it's ironic, in fact, that cloud isn't more well-known from the Google perspective. And there's a reason why. Google's actually been running one of the biggest clouds in the world for 15 or so years, right? We've just happened to be running it internally for our own massive services, right? Think Gmail, think search, and all the other rich Google functionality that we have. But what we've decided to do over the course of the last few years is, in fact, roll out a lot of these services to our customers. Think infrastructure as a service. I have VMs. I want to run applications in the cloud. Think PaaS, or a platform as a service. I just want to start building applications in the cloud that scale automatically. And Google likes to think that way, right? We like to try to create abstraction layers so you can start to create applications on the cloud as you go. The other thing that's a bit ironic here, I think Ferris pointed this out earlier, that's when I realized, we've actually been doing cool things on our internal cloud that we've been writing as white papers, and now we're starting to roll this out onto our cloud now, right? So think, we were the ones that wrote Hadoop. We were the ones who invented that concept, right? And we've put it on the white paper, and now we're finally starting to roll that out for our own customers. Same thing with machine learning. Think of containers or Kubernetes, right? These are all things that were kind of invented in-house, and now we're starting to roll out to the world. And so that's what Google Cloud brings to the table. So I just wanted to give the 10-second pitch. I'm not a salesperson. I'm not selling, but it is the best service out there. No, it is, right? So let me start from the very beginning, right? This is a typical journey that our customers take. And I do want to talk about identity. Identity is very core to what we want to talk about here. Most of our customers have their on-prem environment. Of course, they have their own directory. They run some custom apps. They run packaged applications. They have all these firewalls and load balancers that go along with it. That's what that red box is supposed to be. But the key here is that everything is on-prem. Your whole world lives very conveniently on-prem. And this, of course, extends to your directory, your identities. You already have things very well defined in forest and domains and OUs, and you like the way your world lives here, right? And when you move to the cloud, you just want to take that with you, because it would be quite frustrating to have to reinvent that. So an example of that would be, you have an engineering OU, you have the groups that exist there. So in our development group, you have all our superheroes. Does anyone know who Diana Prince is? I was stunned to find my own daughters didn't know. Wonder Woman, yeah, that's right. And then you have your admin group, where you have, of course, the Beatles. And so these are the people you've already have organized into these nice, convenient groups in your directory structure, and you just want to extend that to the cloud. And so that's what I'm going to show with these wonderful boxes here. We talked about your on-prem. Now you want to do a lift and shift, right? This is a typical use case we hear. I'm running SAP, I'm running Talent, I'm running something that works very well on-prem on a server. I want to wrap it in a container or a virtual machine and put it on the Google Cloud, right? But I need to access it when I do those kinds of things. And so the next thing I do is start to sync my identities from my on-prem world into Google. This can be done in everybody's laughing. Does this accurately explain it? Okay. When I see a smirk like that, I get nervous. And you can do this in a couple of ways, right? We of course, from Google offer tooling that does that. You may have heard of our Google Apps Directory Sync product, GADS, for some, if you know the short analogy. Or your own directory service might actually offer connectors or the bridge to get you there. And most common directory services do that. So now you've synced your identities. This is an actual screenshot of what it looks like from the admin console. My name is there because it was my environment, but everybody else is who we talked about earlier, right? So now you see that this is an actual sync of people that have been synced over there. And this does something powerful, right? Now we've extended the boundary of your enterprise with your identity, right? So Diana Prince, in this case, Wonder Woman herself, can log into her on-prem environment or her cloud environment with the same exact password. We've extended that boundary of how that works for her. This is very simplified. I haven't gotten into VPCs and things like that and natting and all that, but this is in essence how we're trying to extend the boundaries of the enterprise. So now we can start to do something interesting. We can get into RBAC. My friend, I used to be able to do this dance move when I was younger. My friend Christian, who sits in the back, bet me that I would try to do it on stage. He's going to win that bet. I'm not going to do this because I would end up in the hospital. But now you can start to do very interesting things, right? It's RBAC time. So now you can take these identities that exist and that you've synced into the clouds. That you've already done them by group, right? So your admins are synced in there, your devs are synced in there. And now you can start to assign roles to those groups. You don't need to do it by user. In fact, the best practice is to, in fact, not do it by user, because the idea should be you can add users in your source of truth directory, whether it's AD or ping or whatever you happen to have, and they automatically assume those roles in the cloud, and they can start to do interesting things in the cloud with that. Right, so that's kind of the high-level overview of what we wanted to do here, show you that there's a rich IDaaS system that everyone's talked through. We are consumers of our own, what is that, eating your own dog food, is that the expression? We do that, in fact, right, with Google Cloud and Google Apps. And then, of course, we expose all this functionality to our own customers. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to call everyone else back on stage so we can answer some questions. Are there any questions? Did we explain it so well there are no questions? Yes?
So if you're the IDP, so if you're the IDP and there's Coca-Cola, Netflix, et cetera, and so you're offloading a lot of their headaches, do you have an aspirin for the well-known headache of account recovery?
Account recovery.
Account recovery. Is there anything new that you're using for account recovery?
Right.
So
Feel free.
So I think. So I think she's wanting a panacea for account recovery.
Hello. Okay, there we go. Hi. So account recovery, right?
I would suggest referring to the slides you did on Monday with the stats we've seen about
Don't think we have those.
I wish I had them. I probably, how much, do we have like really like 23 minutes left?
Yes.
Okay, I'll grab my laptop. Okay,
So-
I'll,
So just to
Look at it.
clarify the question further, this is admin-based account recovery that you're talking about. Can the admins go and sort of recover the accounts? Is what you're talking about, or?
That's one alternative. That'd be one way. In the case of Netflix and Coca-Cola, it probably would be an admin case.
So meanwhile, I'll probably try to take a step. So our Christian has been trying to explain all this while that how consumer user we are making, like, we are working towards making that more and more secure and, non-unfishable kind of thing. We are bringing, so this is exact same platform, exact same identity and all security parameters that we are working on consumer land. Also, we pull it in enterprise land as well. So to start with, all these this work around security keys and enterprise security keys, etc., will attempt to make user accounts non-phishable or unphishable. So it's, to start with, it's more secure. And even if for whatever reason you get logged out, and that's where account recovery becomes crucial. As a enterprise end user, you can approach your admin, and admin has various ways on admin consoles and APIs to actually reset you, issue you second factor if need be, or like do those things for you so that you get logged out.
So
Also, pretty much whatever you have on consumer things or consumer at gmail.com account, self-service recovery, all of that thing is also now integrated into enterprise. So as an end user, you may or may not always need to reach your admin. You can actually attempt to self-recover yourself, and if that doesn't work, admin is the last resource.
and then I'll quickly add, so this is, I've got another slide after this one, but while I have the laptop plugged in, I might as well refer to this one too. So I think account recovery is a hard problem, we know that. On the consumer side, it's really, really hard, because who do you go to, right? There's no Google Shop, some storefront that you can just walk in, give them a government ID, and suddenly you're logged back in. So there, in that might be a hint as to what we're looking to next, because there are some companies out there that have those storefronts and might be able to do something about it. So that's kind of on the consumer side, we're looking at that. From the enterprise side, the lucky thing there is we have an admin, right? There is an administrator, or there's multiple administrators who hopefully have a personal relationship or a relationship with the customer or the user, and that's kind of the way that we're thinking about managing the account recovery for security keys. So if we look at the slides here, and I want to quickly mention this, on this side is just one usability aspect here before I get to the next one. This is out of Google's own, from our own, well, basically a quick run that we've done on the statistics since deploying security keys at Google internally. And what we can see here is that we used to have OTP key fobs at Google for employees. The time that it took our own internal our own internal staff members to authenticate using OTPs, pretty much roughly around 20 seconds. The slowest guys up to 30, quickest fingers down to 10 seconds. On the security key side, much easier, right? So much quicker using an actual security key to authenticate. So that's good. One thing I want to just quickly mention while I'm on that. And then on the right-hand side, we just basically did that same thing for consumers. So again, on the consumer side, there's one more graph. There is this pink bar. The pink bar is where we send SMS to the customer. So it's not using a key fob or an application. We're sending an SMS. Big surprise, that's the slowest of them all. Can go up to about 40 seconds. In some cases, these OTPs never arrive, right? And it is down all the way to about 10 seconds. But again, your quickest consumer, 2-3 seconds to authenticate. But that's not the interesting slide. The one that I want to mention is this one. So second factor support incidents, right? So actual account recovery. So where Googlers fail. On the OTP side, we used to see a lot. If we look at back July 2014, where pretty much all of the Googlers using multi-factor authentication was still on OTP key fobs, there was a ton of support incidents per month, and these normally translate directly to support cost, right? So there's an actual cost component here. We will see as the time went on, and as I mentioned in my slides earlier, by the November 2015 mark, we pretty much had security key enforcement across Google. That's when Googlers became unfishable. At that point in time, the interesting thing there is the support costs went down, and even as security keys rose to almost 100%, it actually never went, that support cost never came back up. So very, or I guess from that perspective, it's a very simple, very easy to use, very robust platform where once you've registered this thing, it cannot get out of sync like an OTP token. You can drop this thing in a bucket of water, you can plug it back in, it's very robust, unlike many of these other types of key fobs. So I think we do have account recovery. Yes, it's a hard problem to solve. On the enterprise side, we're betting on the domain administrators to be a proxy for us where we cannot be present. But even in that case, we see that the support cost and the number of support incidents on security keys much lower than OTPs.
Yeah. So just to augment, right, I mean, just on the password reset and account recovery part by the admin, we provide all the three mechanisms possible. Like we support all of them. We advocate security keys and the new ones that we've come out with, but all the three sort of courses are possible, which is like we can send you sort of OTP via SMS, or it could be via an app, or finally with the security keys. So all mechanisms supported. This is the more advocated one. And the other part around, I think with security keys, what you're going to see is a lot of the account recovery issues at root, like them happening at all, the issue happening at all, that number is also going to come down as well. So there's one question about fastest finger first, which the graph really pointed out, but I think moreover, the problem itself might be reduced to a big chunk. Like, I mean, that big chunk is going to be reduced to a small level. So I think that's another benefit. The third benefit, which is to the IDP, is that there's a huge cost associated with even sending an SMS and the support costs thereafter. Those costs are also something that we're probably going to relieve by getting into this security key paradigm. That's there. So that's the overall view on this.
Yep.
Yes. So you talk about the Google Cloud. Do you also have Google Fog, or is that on the roadmap? And how does that relate to the Hadoop and some of the distributed processes?
What is that? The Google, can you repeat that, please? Can we get a mic over there?
Let me hand the mic over. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you talk about a Google Cloud. Do you also have like a Google Fog? You know, it's emerging, FOG. Are you familiar with that?
Fog.
Fog. So Cisco is being
Exactly.
its term of fog. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
I see.
Exactly. Yeah. And then how do you integrate that with the Hadoops and distributed processing? That was
I
my-
don't know if we have a roadmap or something like that.
I don't think you have.
Let's get the Google guy to answer